Hello Year 4. Okay, so we're thinking about our treasure maps. So for this lesson, I'm going to show you how to make your background wash with a few little gradient highlights around the outside to look like a real treasure map. Now don't be worrying about, oh, I wanted an island in the middle and I wanted to see around the edge. We can add all that later when it dries, but step one is the background wash. And for this step, you're going to need a little cup of water with a teensy weensy bit of water at the bottom, and I'll explain why in a moment, but just a teeny weeny bit of water at the bottom. And then you need your watercolours. So what we're going to do is, rather than mixing a light brown in the lid of our watercolours, so rather than mixing the brown in there, because we're going to be covering this whole piece of paper in a background wash that's going to be brown, it's actually going to be more sensible to mix it straight into this cup of water. So the first thing I'm going to do is get some brown paint on my brush, and I'm going to add the pigment into my water. You can see it already starts to go a little bit brown. So I'm going to take a little bit more. I'm going to do this probably 5 times. So that was 1, 2, here, I'll move that so you can see what I'm doing. That was 2, 3, 4, and 1 more lot. Swirly, swirly, swirly. 5, okay? So right now, this is going to make my background wash for my treasure map. Now, here's the thing. If we want to make a gradient, so like a darker effect around the edges, we can't wait until the end to do that. We've got to kind of do that as we're going along. So let me show you what I mean. So first things first, you can see it goes on pretty light, okay? So I'm going to start near this corner, and I'm going to fill up this page about, let's see, yeah, about this much, okay. And then before it dries at the edge, I'm going to take some pure brown and I'm just going to tap it off the edge. That's all I'm going to do. Now it is going to use capillary action to try and kind of blend in with the other paints, but that's fine. So there we go. Right, now I'm going to clean my brush off and I'm going to carry on. And if the darker brown around the edge starts to bleed in, that's absolutely fine. That will kind of look cool. So this is literally a lesson in how to paint a piece of paper brown. But it's something you need to know how to do. Otherwise, what I think I'll end up with is really dark brown paper without any tonal gradient around the edge. So I'm going to show you it, and then you know how to do it yourself. The best thing to do is get yourself some thick-ish paper. Okay, if you're working on printer paper, so the kind of paper that goes through the printer, you're not going to be able, I mean, you'll still get some of this effect, but it won't look as dramatic, because printer paper doesn't really hold up very well to water. Whereas the paper I've got here, it's designed to be used with watercolour. So it's really, really robust. It can handle plenty of water being added to it. So watch. There we go. Edges being done there. Keep going. Now, in a moment, when I've finished all this, I'm actually going to use a tissue to take maybe some of the pigment out in areas. So some areas I'm going to make lighter than others. Now, once this brown has dried completely, we can actually then add other colours over the top at a later stage. This is just the background for our treasure map. And the reason I'm doing this, it's kind of like, you know, that aged effect that you find with books and maps and paper that's been kind of left around for a long time. Gives it that kind of oldie worldy look. Okay, so let's keep going. Now, you don't want to let your brown paint dry, because it can leave kind of funny shapes where it dries. So try and get this done without letting your paint dry first, okay? Right, we're nearly done. Now, obviously, you'll take more time over it than I have. I'm just doing this quickly so you can see an overview of the activity rather than me doing it super, super slow. Okay, so I think that'll do for this step. If you want to, because in the middle of this paper we are going to have something that looks more like a treasure island, you might want to just use a tissue to take a little bit of pigment out of the middle. It also helps with the gradient towards the edges of the paper. So you might want to just dab a little bit to take some of the pigment out. Don't take it all out, otherwise you'll have to start all over again. I'm just going to use my finger actually to just see where it's still wet. Yeah, it's still a bit wet over here. Okay, right, I'm just going to blend that in a bit there. Okay, right, I'm not going to mess with it anymore because I don't want to have any obvious brush strokes. I want it to kind of look like the paper did this naturally on its own. Okay, now you're going to resist the temptation to do anything else to this, and we're going to leave this to dry. Okay then, so that was the first step of making a background wash for your treasure map. All right then, thank you, Year 4.